So while creating a test case, we have briefly touched upon the shared steps, but I didn't go into too much detail what those are. So let's go back to editing my test case that I have been working on, and we'll see what can be done with the shared steps. Imagine a situation where you'll run into having a need to consistently perform the same action over several different test cases. Like in my scenario, let's say that every single test case starts with this action, so my engineer need to authorize into an internal system first before they can proceed further. But in addition to that, my admin requires me to change the password for that internal system every month. So normally, what I would have to do when a password changes, I would have to try and find every single test case where I had the old information that is no longer effective, that is outdated, try to find every single one of those and update the information manually. You can imagine that it's a chore if I have tens or hundreds of test cases with this same step. So to save myself some time, I would rather convert my step into a shared step. I would need to give it a name. And now it gets locked down in my test case where I have edited. So now when I want to change something about it, I would need to go into the shared steps section. The latest one that you have created is going to be found on the top, of course. And if I want to change something, some parameters of this exact step, I would be doing it here. So I'm changing the password in the input data field. And now if I go back to my case, I'm going to see that it got updated and now shows the new information. So you can imagine that if I had 100 of those, if I had 100 of test cases with the same shared step applied to them all, it would save me a ton of time with not having to update all that information manually. The shared steps themselves actually can work as groups too. So if it's not just one action, but there are additional actions required, instead of creating several shared steps, I could just create one and introduce multiple steps to reproduce into it. So if after authorizing into an internal system, my engineer needs to go into their profile, I can add it as a part of the shared step. I will save it again. And now going back to my case, I will see that there are now two steps. The first one is the authorization, and since I have adjusted my shared step to include this second part to it, it is also now featured in my test case. So as you can imagine, it can save you a lot of time on those menial tasks, and instead of spending that valuable time on updating and trying to find every single test case you need to update, you would just be doing it with the shared steps.